This evening's session went on for quite a bit. I ended up basically recording this a little bit after my kid went to sleep. A lot of the session is pretty much what you're just seeing right here on the screen. Me reading through the next part of the book, looking it over, and doing a whole lot of nothing, really. I'm in a position right now where I think the next chapter I need to write is going to be a chapter that I am going to end up completely tossing out later. Often, as writers, we there's a certain understanding that a lot of what you write is going to get changed, reshaping and all that stuff later on. And I feel like for every project I've ever taken on, there's always a handful of chapters that I end up putting in a little bit later in the process, not necessarily even this early in the first draft, usually maybe like a second draft, something like that. I'll throw in a chapter or two that I feel like is needed, that even in the back of my head, I already know is going to get cut towards the end. That almost certainly I'm going to end up just getting rid of it. But I throw it in there because I feel like in the moment it's needed. And there's always that like handful of days, like 2 or 3 days where you just procrastinate. You don't want to do it because you're arguing with yourself saying, basically being like, well, you're working for nothing. You're wasting time writing a chapter that's never going to be used. You're not moving the story forward. You're just going to spin your wheels and procrastinate for a week working on a chapter that's not needed. Why would you even bother? There's a sort of like kind of mental fight with yourself that you always go through, which I'm going through now, which is why a lot of this next part was just me reading through it. This was just me reading through the what will be basically be the in-between. So I have kind of the chapter before what I'm planning to write, and then I have the chapter afterwards. And this is me reading the in-between, making corrections, just completely avoiding having to bite the bullet and put in this new chapter. As a writer, you need to be willing to write the incorrect thing for a while. It sucks, and again, you're wasting a lot of energy on something that's not even going to be used, so I get it. But unfortunately, writing is not a linear process. It's never is. It's never a straightforward process. It's a lot of circling the wagons. It's a lot of going one place, all the cliches, right? One step forward, two steps back, that whole business. So much of it is that. So much of it is that. And often it takes writing the incorrect thing for you to look at it and realize what you wrote was incorrect and then come up with a solution. It's not enough just to say, well, what you're going to write is not going to work. Just wait for the answer to come. Unfortunately, the answers don't really come in the waiting. They come in the aftermath of the mistakes. So you have to go in knowing you're making the mistake, make the error, and then upon that, reflect on it, dissect what you wrote, and then usually in that process, your brain does this thing where it can kind of come up with a better answer, with a better solution. And so most likely that's what's going to be happening next is I'm going to be working on probably for at least the next week or two, a chapter that's going to be completely tossed out later. Yeah, so that's real inspiring. I know, real happy. But it is what it is, and that's again going into these things. It's always a struggle, and unfortunately, getting better. The more experience you get, the more you're aware that certain things you're working on aren't going to work. The awareness of it doesn't change it. The being aware that what you're writing is going to be a problem is not going to help, because you sort of have to go in with this kind of like blind faith that what you're working on is going to pay off, and somehow it always does. I've never taken on a project yet well, a few, but for the most part, generally speaking, you go into a project with kind of blind faith, and usually something decent comes out at the end. So it'll be with this chapter. So tomorrow begins, I guess, a chapter that I'm going to end up just completely deleting in like a year. So, all right, on to that. I will see you all tomorrow.